Hey everyone, welcome to Founder Journeys. This is episode 2. Founder Journeys, as you know, is a place where we talk to early stage or super early stage startup founders, try and understand their story, get into the real raw conversation of what goes on behind these startups that they build, their struggles, the victories, and all of the other things that go with it. Today we are speaking with Mircea Gogoncha. He's originally from Romania, now settled in LA. Mircea is a professional musician. He started playing at the age of 4. He's had more than 400 performances across 4 continents. He's a mathematician. He's won awards for literature as well. And he's building Confy, a startup that is focused at revolutionizing the events and conferences space. So let's dive in. Mircea, welcome to the episode 2 of Founder Journeys. Really happy
Wow.
to have you here.
It's a great honor to be in the single digits. What can I say?
I know. You're in the
Yeah,
top two.
that's right.
So I really was amazed at reading your profile and learning about what you've been up to. You got so much of history already, man. And I really want to know your journey and what it's been like. You've done 400 performances across 5 continents. You're like a musician, and now you're getting into tech and you've done literature. It's like mind boggling for someone like me, okay?
Wait,
Because
which profile did you read? I'm curious. Like, where did you find it?
Chat GPT, baby.
Oh, I see. I haven't actually. I've Googled myself many times, especially when I was
Mhm.
younger, but I've never put my name into ChatGPT. So
Oh, you should
that's gonna
try
be
it
my
out.
first homework after we finish this.
Yeah. So whenever there are startup founders that we kind of list out and we say, okay, we got to listen to their story, I do a quick profile search, which is contextualized in the way that we are going about things. So we really want to understand the authentic story behind it. We really want to understand the challenges you face, things like that. And I've created a custom prompt that kind of gives me a very interesting summary of what you've been up to. It's pretty cool, and
Nice.
I'm telling you, I've it's been I think many weeks now I've not gone and done a Google search by default. And I
Yes.
think the
Oh
world is
yeah.
moving in that
I
direction.
I totally understand. My usage of Google, all due respect to the great company that Google is, but I have also mostly downgraded my usage of Google to the very obvious things like what's the weather, how long will it take me to drive over there, or news about such and such, and that's basically it. That being said, even though I am on ChatGPT all day, every day, maxing out my deep research queries this morning, I still have never used it like that. So I'm really happy to learn more about how you do things.
The whole idea
Love it.
of founder journeys is to try and create some serendipity so that the right people hear you talk about your stuff and say, hey, I want to meet this guy and I want to back this guy or I want to work with this guy. That's what we're trying to make
Yeah,
happen, right?
amazing. Yes, I am the founder and CEO of Cicada and Confy more recently, which is not fully public as of yet, but it will be by the time that this goes out. And I am primarily known as a musician. My very first startup was started 12 and a half, almost 13 years ago. And it
Okay.
was also in music tech like Cicada. And Confy is my very first non-music startup. It's still an event, kind of like similar to our previous work in Cicada, but it is my very first non-music focused business. So yeah, the longer version of it is that I I'm in my early 30s. I was born in Romania at a very special time in Romanian history, right after the Romanian Revolution of
Oh,
1989. So I'm part of the new generation that never lived under the autocracy that the country was subjected to for a very long time before then. And I started out life as a musician. My parents are not musicians. I did a lot of things as a kid. That's probably what ChatGPT was referencing. Literature is a long, long time ago that I took part in like competitive writing competitions. So, having been born at this really special time in a family of really intelligent, lower middle class high school and university professors, teachers and professors, I was born financially poor and intellectually rich at a very special time. And so From very early on in my life, my dad would trade lessons that he would teach other teachers' kids in exchange for me getting individual instruction in a lot of really important things. Music ended up being the one that I focused on. We can get into that and how I was relatively successful early on, and I showed some promise, which is why I went that way. But it was not the only one. Very important for what I'm doing now. My dad was a computer science professor and is still a computer science professor. And so he taught me coding in Pascal when I
Oh,
was 4 years
nice.
old. I started at the same time as the guitar, pretty much. And probably the thing that ChatGPT was referencing was something out of some of the articles that were written about me when I was a kid. I was in the media a lot because of my music activity, and one of the things they loved to say was, "Oh, he's got prizes in 7 or 8 different domains in different activities," and they would list like music and computer science and
Yeah.
photography and fine arts and whatever. I guess photography is part of fine arts anyway. And pretty early on, I became what you would most likely call a music prodigy. This sounds really conceited to say it by myself, but I was really humbled by the success that I achieved. I was able to tour the world, starting with my very first tour at the age of 8 in Germany. I was on TV about every month, and I had a crazy
Wow.
childhood. But all of that was kind of, to put things into perspective now, to be humble again, all of that was partially related to the novelty of me being so young and doing all of those things. So as soon as I wasn't extremely young doing those things, most of them sort of fizzled out, partially because I didn't have time for them, partially because nobody cared as much about the 13 or 15-year-old doing something, where they did
Hmm.
care about the 6 or 8 or 9-year-old doing them. So a lot of that was hype, realistically speaking. I feel maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of it was just this sort of persona that grew almost without my choice, that was kind of formed around me when I was a kid. But I did grow up in the limelight because of that, which was really exciting because, again, I come from a relatively humble background, and my parents always put their hope in me that I would be the one to sort of lift them out of poverty. I come from a medium of being really, really well supported by everybody around me. So I'm very lucky from that point of view.
Awesome. So my question to you is, at such a young age, when you get all this adulation and then you see that it turns out to be hype the moment you get into your teenage years, what is a key learning, or what did you derive out of that? And how has that changed your approach to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so two things come to mind. The first one is uh, pretty simple. It's a healthy dose of skepticism. Like, I think I recognize plays pretty easily, like media plays or like persona building pretty easily. More importantly, I think I had to redefine myself many times, and this was the first crucible moment. I feel like all the things that I did when I was a very young child were kind of by default. Like, I happen to learn pretty fast. That's, I always say, my one superpower is that I learn fast. I happen to learn pretty fast, but all of this happened to me, kind of, and so when I became a teenager, I had to reinvent myself and decide, am I gonna be a painter? Am I gonna be a musician? Am I gonna be a tech guy? What am I gonna do? And I went through an existential crisis around the age of about 13, 14, when I
Okay.
started questioning many things, including, philosophy and religion and other things. But I picked sort of music and tech as the things that I wanted to focus on. But I was worried about it at that moment. Am I doing these just because I'm a good boy that does what his parents say? Or is this actually my choice? Like, I got into my head a little bit about how much of it is actually my free will and how much did I choose to be here. And I had to reinvent myself, and that was the first time that I did it, was in my early teens. I did that again when I moved to Germany at 17, and again when I moved to England, and then again when I moved to the US. I've lived in 4 countries. I was traveling a lot, but this was the first crucible moment of reinventing myself, and I think that's the learning that I derived, was that I feel I need to feel like I'm owning those choices in order to feel satisfied in my life, and success itself doesn't actually bring me happiness if it feels like it's not my choice. And so I sort of vowed to live my life more intentionally. It sounds silly to say that about a 13-year-old, but
No,
that's
it's
looking back on it, that's kind of what I did. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I think transformations in one's journey happens when you have the right people around you to give you feedback, right?
Yeah,
Mentors is one thing that happens, meaning
yeah,
we don't call them mentors at that time, but it's just that people who guide us, people we look up to, people we've seen work around us that we say, okay, you have some regard for what they say. So have you gone through similar kind of people along that journey when
yeah,
you took these transitions?
yeah. Yeah, I can think of many of them. Around that age of 13, 14, when the first change happened, um, I think it was just my teachers mostly and my colleagues, my friends. I was going out into the world, and even though I'm 33, I had to think about it for a second. Even though I'm 33, I I come from a very different time and a very different culture that maybe doesn't even really exist in the same way anymore. But when I was about 13, 14, I really sort of went out into the world. I mean, I was away from home for days at a time. I was either traveling, sanctioned by my parents or not. I was sometimes just doing stuff, just hanging out with friends. But I think just going out into the wider world and becoming less sheltered was what changed for me. I can definitely point to some specific mentors later in life when I had those important moments at other times. Um, so that definitely happened. But I think the very first one was just me coming out of my shell, so to say, and being
Taking that leap. Yeah.
yeah, being independent. I must say, if we're gonna open up, let's open up fully.
Yeah.
I did not have my parents did not have the best marriage, and so I was independent very early on, a little bit earlier than most people, or a lot earlier than most people would like for their children to be independent.
Right.
So I really feel like I kind of became an adult around that age, maybe 14, 15. But I really became an adult very, very early on, which was evidenced by the fact that at 17 I moved alone to Germany, where I didn't speak the language, I didn't have friends, I didn't know anybody,
Mm.
and I started a new life basically, which is my second identity. But I think I owe everything I have to all the great people in my life. So definitely not discounting them.
Awesome. No, it's interesting because life experiences earlier on define us to such an extent, and
Yeah,
a lot of people. And when I think about your journey, it's you mentioned classical music, and classical music is so much about
yes,
discipline, right? The
yeah,
rigor that is there, and I think that really helps getting into entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is also about
yeah,
so much of rigor, so much of discipline. You need to kind of make sure that you know where you're going, and there is
yeah,
discipline even in the pivots. There's discipline even in the
yes,
decisions and the testing that you do that a lot of people don't realize most of the time, right? They just
yeah,
think, oh
yeah,
yeah, we just go around and figure it. Yeah, you are figuring it as you go, but still there is some discipline wherein you're kind of checking off things you're testing, you're learning
yeah.
from it, you're analyzing it, you're putting it back on the board, things like that. So I think,
I think
do,
that's
do
true.
you think this has helped you a lot in that whole book?
Oh yeah. So a couple of things when it comes to that. I think first of all, musicians are entrepreneurs. There are some exceptions. I'm gonna put a big asterisk there. In classical music, there are some professions that are not entrepreneurial. For example, being an orchestra musician or being a choir person or even employed by an opera or a theater is
Mhm.
generally not very entrepreneur-like. Just because you get a job and you have like W-2 income
Right.
and that's it. But as a classical guitarist, which is specifically my instrument, my background, we are not part of orchestras or choirs, and we're not typically employed by an institution except for teaching. And so being a guitarist is generally completely freelance. The
Mm.
entirety of being a performing guitarist is fully independent. And so it is entrepreneurship, in its purest form. You often don't have any employees or anything else. It's you yourself doing everything, getting gigs and collecting payment and negotiating, and eventually, if you're
Right.
successful, you can get a team behind you. You can get a manager, a booking agent, all sorts of other stakeholders involved in this. But for the large early part, it's just you. So that's one thing. Secondly, I do agree with your assessment 100% that classical music requires a lot of discipline, and that is so relevant and so important for entrepreneurship. So I think that's a good point. And in fact, I know of a few classical musicians that have become quite successful entrepreneurs, and I think there is something there. Thirdly, any performing art tends to bring with it a certain level of charisma in the stage presence. Just because
Hmm.
you are so experienced, it's a skill like any other, and being on stage in front of people for hundreds of times, like in my case, does actually help you. I remember I was very proud when I was going through Techstars last year that we had pitch practice, and we have this session where people are throwing papers at you to try to distract you, to throw you off your pitch.
Okay.
Maybe one of the most proud things I did in Techstars was that I was completely unfazed, just because that's my training. That's literally, I mean, I have
Yeah.
decades of experience. It was completely unfair on my colleagues that they are doing that for the first time when I had been doing it since the age of 5 when I played my first
The-
my first public
yeah.
gig. But so there's a certain level of commanding a room and commanding attention and being able to recite things and storytelling. It's definitely part of that.
Okay.
Even for the very introverted musicians, because we've all practiced this skill for our work. Yeah, and then of course there is the fact that I was not just a musician. I had entrepreneurial ambitions since very early on. Not only did I start my first startup at 19, 20 ish, but also before that, I was obsessed with inventions. I had this
Okay.
obsession with gadgets for so many years. I was so mad. There is an article about me written by a guy in this newspaper from Romania. I don't know if the newspaper still exists, but it did. It was a big deal at the time. It was called Adevărul, the truth. And this newspaper wrote an article about me, and my musician accomplishments and all of that. And at the end, I was so, 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 so mad that they added those two lines that said something along the lines of, in his free time, Mircea likes to design gadgets, including beds that help with weight loss. And I hated that line so much because what I told the reporter, and this is, hey, media training at the age of like 7.
Yeah.
What I told the reporter was that I love gadgets and inventions and building things and trying to imagine selling different products and coming up with business plans, which I was doing as a big nerd when I was, at that age. And I was telling him, yeah, I have these like 7 things I'm working on right now, 7 gadgets. And he's like, tell me about one of them. And one of them was this idea of a bed. I don't even fully remember. It had some sort of gamified element to make you exercise inside the bed. I don't know. And I mean, not a great idea. But but the thing that I hated so much was that entire conversation where he was egging me on to talk about this was reduced to like a few words out of context, and you can still find that article because I was obsessed with selling inventions and gadgets when I was a kid. So I've been entrepreneurial forever, and it's not that everyone has to show it early on, but I think some people that are very passionate will have done things in their early childhood that points to it. That makes it really clear that we've got the bug.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a very cool story.
Just you just reminded me of that particular one
Yeah.
from when I was a kid, because it's probably the earliest proof, like written proof, that I have
Right.
of entrepreneurial pursuits in a very early age.
Yeah. So the other thing is what people, again, I'm just trying to, we're diving into the mind, right, of when we are on the journey and we're trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
So early on in your teens or in your early 20s, you're super excited at stuff. You're trying everything. You're
Yeah.
fearless, right? After
Yeah.
some time, a lot of people kind of mellow down a bit. They start to realize, oh man, I've had more misses than hits. Does that
Yes.
kind of a thing ever come into your mind when you're on your next journey?
Yeah.
So at the core, you're saying, I'm going to make it happen, but still, there's a sense of self-doubt somewhere that comes in because of the misses you've had most recently, probably. Does
Big
that
time.
really
And
impact
I
how
I
you
have it.
operate?
I mean, I try to not let it impact, but I have it right now from a number of things that we'll get to. So yeah, big time. When my first startup failed, that we were trying to do Zoom in the browser for music lessons. That's kind of, it was a
Okay.
long distance education for music lessons, um, which nowadays exists. And if we had held on until the pandemic, I'm sure it would have been a big
When
hit.
was this? When
But
did you start that one?
this was 2010 or
Oh, that's
11.
pretty early. Oh,
So it was this codec web RDC had just come out by Google, and they were doing like, stuff in the browser. I mean, we are in a browser window right now. It's the same
Yeah.
technology. It was just becoming popularized, and we had this idea of optimizing it for music lessons so that you can teach them at a distance. It started out with my teacher just wanting to teach online lessons. I did some math and I showed him that it wouldn't be enough money to be able to sustain me being a full-time employee helping him doing that, because he couldn't possibly teach as many lessons as he would have had to in order to sustain both of us. And so I came up with this marketplace idea where you would have teachers on one side and students on the other side, and we would take a commission based on them using the platform, and then
Right.
that would have the opportunity of being big enough, not only
Mm.
just for me and him to have a full-time job, but also for to build a company around. And we tried that, and we did not succeed. And I take the blame for failing to accomplish. I was CEO. I take the blame for failing to align incentives. I had a complicated relationship with the product team, who was doing this as a side gig, and I wasn't able to get funding or find some way to align them. So I made a lot of mistakes. Eventually, it didn't work out. I sold my shares to my co-founder, and he continued to run it for a few years. But after that, that was a pretty traumatic experience. I kind of retired for a while from startups because of that. So the self
Okay.
doubt very much got to me, and it's not just the self doubt; it was also the
The
extreme
experience of
burnout
it.
and stress from from
Yeah.
from it. So I was thinking about it between that and my newest startup, the one for which we have this product coming out this week. That between those two was a significant number of years. More than 7 years had passed. And I realized that I was still doing entrepreneurship, just not in a tech startup kind of way. So in between those times, I co-founded Nigeria's first set of classical guitar workshops and master classes, together with a series of students there. I built a business for myself playing gigs, background music, and other gigs. When I moved to LA, I created a teaching studio with my friends. I did a lot of things. I got a job at a startup eventually, not as a founder, but as an employee. I created this live streaming department inside of that startup, which I was telling you about. Um, this startup called Tone Base. They do music education, classical music education primarily. Although I think now they do jazz and some things as well. I've left that a few years ago as well. And even there, I was doing intrapreneurship. That is inside of the business. I was creating a small business, and
Right.
I'm really proud of what we've accomplished with Tone Base Live. It was my baby. And it's still going strong to this day. I think they've had thousands of live streams, maybe tens of thousands. I don't know. Definitely thousands of live streams until now, and I've personally hosted more than 100 of them myself in the few years that I was there. So to go back to your question, I did feel you know down because of the lack of accomplishments, and I did take a break, so to say, even though the break was not fully from building things. It was from being the founder of things, being the
Yeah.
co-creator of a tech startup. And to a certain degree, I'm dealing with that all the time. I mean, I wish all our conversion numbers were higher. I wish I could get more meetings, booked. I wish I could, and all of that weighs on me. And if you let it, it can absolutely bring you down and make you feel really bad. So it's a constant struggle from that point of view.
Yeah. Startup life is always that, right? Because um, many years ago, 2012, the last time I was, in the middle of running a startup as a co-founder. The sleepless nights are always about, making sure that the team is motivated enough, the team,
Yeah,
how do you make sure that, so for example, if your revenue numbers are not up as yet, then you're always worried about making sure your costs are optimal, making sure the salaries
exactly.
go out on time, things like that, then you're hustling. And then on the other days, you may have just a small customer calling back and saying, "Okay, let's meet and let's get going," and then you're on top of the world. Okay, you got
Yes,
it, right?
exactly.
The highs and
That
lows.
is the
That's how it
roller
is.
coaster. That's exactly it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're so
So
excited for like a day, and then it's
yeah.
yeah. That's it. That's
So
it.
yeah,
Exactly.
we've all been there, right? But then
Yeah.
I think what is important is when you're doing it for enough years, you start noticing the things that you need to pay attention to and the things that you should disregard. Yeah. So that's the whole thing about startups, right? Building
Yeah.
product, building a business is not easy. People, we always look at the ones who made it. We never talk about the ones who didn't make it. But then there are so many people who don't make it the first time, but they learn from what didn't work and they move on and they get into the next one, and then that they do it right, and then they,
Exactly.
they hit
Yeah.
it. And that's a whole journey, really, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, now coming back to what you're doing now, let's get into
Yeah.
the current journey that you're on. And so what is it that inspired you to get into Confy? Because I know it's a move away from the music business. It's a move away
Yeah.
from the creative business in that sense. It's more about community, which is, I'm
Yeah.
sure
It
that,
is.
that's a common connect I'm seeing when it comes to um, your ecosystem along,
Yeah.
all along.
It
So
is. It is.
talk a little bit about
Um,
how you decided to get into it, really.
Yeah, it was kind of an accident, really. And Confy, our newest product, which again is hitting the market this week. So we founded this company, Cicada Music Incorporated, in late 2023, to help musicians earn more money from gigs, because the co-founders were musicians ourselves, and we've seen this problem. We've lived it our entire lives. And in the process of building that, we created these audience engagement tools that were meant to help musicians gather fan data. So they were meant to help them gather emails and phone numbers, because as a touring artist, you oftentimes don't know who's in your audience. You don't, whether you're playing a busking gig or whether you're just opening for a bigger act, you typically don't control that CRM of
Yeah.
who's at your performance, and who do you ask to buy your merch when you go back to that same town the next time. And so we created these engagement tools to help musicians contact people and figure out who's in their audience. And as we were going through Techstars, which I can get into, that was a transformational experience, and definitely the greatest thing that has happened to us on the entrepreneurship side so far. And when we were going through Techstars, we were getting ready for demo day, and we noticed that they were going to make a virtual brochure with everybody's info on it. Our info was requested for it, and we realized that we built something better than the brochure software that they were going to use. We had all of these advanced tools that could change the information on your phone in real time, and we're like, why
Right.
would you use basically a glorified PDF when you could use all of this, and you could you could put up the call to action link with every founder that was on stage, and you could change that information, put up a Calendly that changes with the current person that's speaking, and we did that. So we used our existing software, our Cicada Music software, to create the virtual brochure. And since that worked so well, that we might have had the most visibility at demo day out of all the 24 companies that pitched, just because we were the tool that they were using, right there. We realized that this is a product that can be used by pitch competitions all over the world, and so we started selling it after we gave it away to Techstars for free for that one demo day that we were a part of. We started selling it, and to this day we're still expanding on that Cicada brochures side, basically virtual brochures for pitching events. So if you run a pitching event, let me know. I can probably hook you up with a very good deal on virtual
Oh,
brochures. But
okay.
basically that became a widening of the scope. We realized, look, man, I mean, we built this for musicians, but people together in a room is our specialty now, whether it's for music or for something else. Data collection is clearly so important for music, and we learn so much about data doing virtual brochures as well. It's clear that the tools that you see at other events are generally very bad, and it's not just the virtual brochure tools, but in general the conference apps, the tools that you use, to find a way around venues are generally not very good. I hope I don't offend anyone. Actually, you know what? I don't care. I will
No,
offend. They
that's
they
that's
are
the whole space you're talking about. Doesn't matter. That's
that's
the wedge that you're talking about. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. So actually,
Hmm.
I've decided, I've just made up my mind, I will offend. They are Web 1.0 businesses. You go to a conference, try to download their conference app. It's clearly a
Hmm.
website, that's displayed on your phone. It's got a lot of problems, and we realize that what we have the potential to do is if we can help people accomplish their goals at events, and include actual modern technology, like include AI first capability and vector search and all of these things, we will be able to build a better tool for any time people get together in a room. And so Confy is we call it AI for events as the super short version of what we do. And the slightly longer version is that we do data enrichment and people and product matching for in-person events. It's you can think of it as an AI first conference app, or you can think of it as a discovery layer on top of an existing tool for events. Because to this day, if you go to a conference and you pull up their conference app, you will see, a list of 50,000 attendees, but you will
But you can
never be
search
able
through
to
them.
look
That's
through
it.
that. Like, yeah, you can't do that. It's crazy. I can only find you if I know you by name, but I can't discover you based on who you are, what other events you've been to, what your LinkedIn says, or what your website says, or anything like that. And so it's in our mind that is so incredibly obvious that this needs to happen. That when it happens, it will usher in a golden age of people and product discovery, of more business being done at in-person events, better knowledge, better targeting, and that it will save people many, many, many hours as you prepare for an event. You have companies spending $100,000, $1 million on sponsoring an event, or just making a really big booth. You go to these events, they have cars in there, and it's not a car company, it's just some other company that pimps out a bus to make their booth great. And they still just have an intern pull up information about like who's there, or make the planning, plan who they're going to talk to. It's crazy to me that this exists and that it's not optimized. So what we're doing really is we're building the definitive database of people and their goals at in-person events. We help all event stakeholders, attendees, exhibitors, sponsors, organizers get more business out of their events, and we help people create more meaningful connection. So we are not helping them spam more leads. We're helping them figure out who their best leads are in advance, exactly so that they can focus their effort on the most important prospects, right? And so I think that this will exist. I think the opportunity is huge, and I think the existing technology is frankly quite horrendous. I'm going to refrain from naming names, but just go to a conference and find me one person that says that the conference app was a good experience. That's homework for you to do if you doubt this
Yeah.
this problem space. I can tell you there's a lot of different players in this space, and that's actually one of the great opportunities, that it's not dominated by an oligopoly of a few players. It's in fact quite fragmented. So you
Got it.
have the old school players like Cvent and WebEx by Cisco. I mean, WebEx was a thing on its own, and it was acquired, as far as I'm aware. But these are like old school events that have existed, or old school software that has existed for multiple decades. There's slightly newer, but still relatively established players like Bizzabo, which are like Series F or something, but not quite as old as the other incumbents. And then there's all of these boutique firms all over Europe. A lot of them are in Europe. A lot of them are in Canada. For some reason, Canada punches above its weight when it comes to event software. But yeah, there's so much. There's so much. So our insight is that event software is not really about events. It's not
It's about
your
the
your
the
software.
attendees. It's about the
Yeah,
users, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's the old model of event software is a phone book. If you open a phone book, you'll find all the phone numbers. But if you don't know who you're looking for, you're not going to find the person that you're looking for. You cannot ask the phone book, hey, find me a prospect that buys musical instruments for K through 12 schools and posts about AI. Like, you can't do that in a phone book, because you need the name of the person in order to get to the specific place. And the same applies for products, and the same applies for sessions. You go to an event, you go to South by Southwest. More than 100,000 people go to it every year, and there's thousands of sessions. you could attend. There's thousands or maybe tens of thousands of exhibitors. There's hundreds of thousands of attendees, and you can see all of these names, but you can't do anything with that. The only thing you can do is walk in and hope for serendipity, or have contacts in advance and meet them and set up meetings in advance and try to work your way, manually. But the fact that the software doesn't help you accomplish your goals is absolutely insane. So we are working on this tool that you will give a goal to, and you can already do this. I would love to show you at some point a demo of what we do. So if I'm a company that spends 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 to exhibit at an event, right? I have a business reason to do that. Whether I'm trying to find leads or strengthen my brand presence, or talk to high value buyers, or make content, whatever it is that I'm trying to do, I'm trying to accomplish something, right? And so instead of being faced with a phone book that gives me 100,000 names that I'll never be able to read through, and 2,000
Yeah.
events, sessions, that I will never be able to attend, I want to go to my conference app and say, I am trying to find leads for my business that does XYZ. Who should I talk to? And that, at that point, all the preparation work is taken away from you, because you cannot physically do the preparation work required in order to be successful at an old school event. Then you get lists of the people you should meet, the sessions you should attend, the products you should visit, the connections you should try to make, maybe scores, maybe whatever it is, but that work cannot
Yeah.
be done by a person, by a single person, or even a team of people. And because data is a walled garden at every event, it's very difficult for an external player to come out and take that and create that, make that possible. So we figured out a way to help existing ticket buyers and existing exhibitors with this. And we think that we've really unlocked something extremely special. So the
Nice.
vision is that you will be able to do all of this based on your goals, and that you'll be able to create, or we will be able to create, a database of all the goals and all the people that go to the world's events. And that will usher in a new golden age of business. So we have, small goals.
That's the
Yeah,
way to go.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So you're right in terms of the whole experience of going to conferences. I used to do a fair amount of conferences the last few years. And now I'm very focused on, there's a lot of things that I'm building on the side. I'm backing some teams that are building interesting products. So we're very selective about the conferences that we go to. And a lot of
Makes sense.
conferences, you actually already are doing the outreach. You already know who you're going to meet, and you're not spending the whole day there.
Exactly.
Most importantly,
Yeah,
a lot of people, they go to
yeah.
conferences, you'll see that they will be around, there'll be multiple events happening around that one single large event. If you go
Yeah.
to in San Francisco, the Dreamforce event that happens around Dreamforce, there'll be like this, 100 other events that are happening, which will be much more focused, smaller groups, and that's how things
And
work.
by the way, the events don't love that. They call that, I think it's called offboarding or something like that, which is
Yeah.
they hate it. They hate it so much.
So that's one thing. Second is the events are not getting cheaper. So when you go into
Yes.
an event, you're expecting value. What is the value you need to get? Is a big question. As a, let's say, okay, you're not even connected. Let's say you're new to a ecosystem and you go in.
Yes.
The simplest way is to find people who are at least in your space, meaning in your domain, so that you can reach out to them, cold outreach,
Yes.
right, at the event. That should happen in real time. So
Yeah.
there are some apps, but they're all web-based apps, as you said, as you rightly mentioned, wherein you have to search for them, but then it's not really real time.
I think I want to challenge you on one thing. I don't think that if you do outreach, it should happen at the event. I think it should happen before the event, and you should target the people that are most likely to care about your product, whatever it is that you're selling, whether it's your own services or some actual product. But you need to build a prospect list in advance, long in advance. You need to target those people, try to set up meetings at for the time of the event, if that is the only time that you will be together in the same place, and go into the event with an intentional plan. And even zooming out from a single event, you should have a database of what events are relevant to you and what people are relevant and going to which events. So
Yeah.
even before you choose to go to an event or not, you should figure out based on your goal, is this the one to go to, or should I do something else with my time, or maybe not go to any of them at all? So I think that the reason why people don't really do successful outreach at events, and the reason why you generally just go in for a few meetings and don't stay for a very long time is precisely because discovery does not work. Discovery at events is based just on serendipity, on the serendipity of going and meeting, some people at specific booths and specific events, sessions that happen at the conference. So I think that we've become so okay with this world where discovery is broken that we don't even realize that there is a better way. And not to peel back the curtain too far, but if you have a full database of what people are trying to accomplish at all events worldwide, you can make better events
Yeah,
than
yeah,
the
yeah,
events that are
absolutely.
happening now. So long term, I mean, discovery, if we are able to fix people and product discovery, um, I think it will fundamentally change the way that events happen, and you'll be able to create entire new styles of events. And by the way, we don't want to replace existing events, but we want to give them an insight into how they could be running their things so that they can be more successful, and so that we can provide value in ways that they currently do not at the moment. Like
Hmm.
I'm not even trying to compete with the event makers, the event organizers long term. I'm trying to empower them. Now, if they don't want that help, eventually somebody will take it. I don't know if that'll be us or somebody else or just new entrants into the market. But it's clear to me that things could be going better, and it's clear to me that a lot of money and time is being wasted in an industry that has the reputation of not working very well. And I think that discovery and the ability to do goal based research is the missing link. That's the hypothesis that we're betting the business on.
Uh,
Yeah.
Not, it doesn't always work that the hypothesis you go with is the right one, but there will be an adjacent one that works very well that you realize once you go into the market, right? Based on what the users want, really.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure you've heard of Luma. Luma is
Yes.
what we
We
use
love
for
Luma.
events nowadays. But what I don't
Yeah.
like about Luma is this: Luma gives me recommendations of events that I can go to, but
Right.
I'm always curious as to who else is going there. So it'll show
Yeah.
me there are more than 40 people going there. But unless I give my information and sign up or apply
Yeah.
to register for that event, I'm not able to see who else is going. And that's a blocker because for me, the
Yeah.
decision to register is based on who else is going a lot of
I
times,
totally understand. I
right?
totally understand. And
So my
here's the thing.
question to you here is,
Yeah, go on. Go ahead.
right? So a lot of these event enablers, enablement focused apps, let me put it that way, are focused on getting the data first and then providing services. How do you bridge the gap? How do you make it like, almost like a free? Is there a freemium version to this? In the sense, freemium version like user experience to this is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Meaning, a user does not have to register, or is there a way that the user gets enough data so that they can take a decision?
I would love for that to exist. It doesn't initially in Confy the way that we've built it so far. Um, but I want to say I do have a thought that relates to Luma. So we've been a little focused on conferences, but there is no reason why this wouldn't work at a Luma event as well. So you have to understand the difference where conferences are huge events
Yeah,
with billions of dollars spent on that exhibitions market per year, and these events are small, often done on no budget or under $1,000 budget.
yeah,
They typically don't have exhibiting brands. They typically don't have booths or sponsors. Sometimes they have sponsors. But basically, what I'm trying to say is the kind of data that exists at these small events is mostly people data. So you have
Yeah.
people data at Luma style events, and then you have all sorts of data, including people data, at conferences. Um, we are actually working on Luma integration as we speak, which will allow you when you join an event, when you join the guest list, to search through the guest list in the same way that you would at a conference. So if you see a Luma event with 500 people, I can be like, find me investors in the entertainment space, and it will find people from that guest list that are in the entertainment space. Um, our data enrichment is our sort of bread and butter when it comes to this, and we use multiple sources and multiple ways to make it to make it searchable. But that's the primary, that's the I think the immediate value that you can get out of Confy. So we plan to launch with Luma soon as well, maybe by the end of this month. And we're recording this in May, just to keep me honest. So
Yeah.
maybe by the end of this month, we should have a Luma integration as well, where you will, as long as you're on the guest list, you'll be able to search through the guest list using all the sources that we have. There are some
Awesome.
caveats.
Hmm.
You still have to be registered at the event. We definitely don't have the ability, technological or legal, actually, technologically, it might be possible, but definitely not legally, to give people who are not registered at an event information about that event that belongs to the event owner or Luma itself.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an ethical way to do that. There might be. I mean, there is one. There is an obvious one. If everybody at the event is already on Confy and they volunteer that information to us, then great. Then we can do it. But realistically, the first version, the first incarnation of what you speak will be the ability for you, once you are on the guest list, to search the guest list using a prompt.
Yeah. Now there are many ways you can do this, right? For example, it's in the interest of the host of the event as well, because what
Yes.
happens is it could be masked information. You don't need to know the specific person, but you could say senior directors of XYZ brand are going to be there. That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
You don't need to say who.
Yeah.
So what happens
Yeah.
is then I'm saying, okay, fine, this particular person of the or that role could be there, so I should go for the event. And that kind of helps the host also get more registrations. So it's a
Yeah.
two-way street, any which ways. It gives people enough information to register for the event, and the host also makes a successful event of it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
these again, we're getting
Absolutely.
into the weeds here, but yeah, there are many ways of making it work is all I was thinking about here. But
Yeah.
um, the reason why I asked you this question and brought in the reference of Luma actually was more to do with your conference related app. Um, so you mentioned that you have, and you can disclose only as much as you're comfortable with, but
Sure.
you mentioned that your focus is on giving recommendations to people about the events they should attend based on their profile with you. So if my
Eventually,
my
that's more of a
profile.
larger vision. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually. That's once you have the database of what people are trying to accomplish across many events, then you can do that. That's not where we're starting, just because you need to ingest a lot of data to make that. Initially,
Yeah.
where we're starting is just at a specific event. Here are the people you should meet. Here are the
Got it.
sessions you
Got it.
should attend. Here are the booths
Yeah.
you should go to. Long term, imagine a world where 70, 80% of the world, when they go to events, they use Confy. At that
Yeah.
point, you can function as a larger marketplace for where do you go to
Yeah.
promote your brand
I get
or
that. Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's where I was kind of just trying to get a sense of what you're thinking of and your vision.
In an ideal world, that should happen, and if we can figure out the way to make it happen, within 3 months instead of a year, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's hope that there are some interesting people who are looking at this, listening to this conversation, and then say, okay, this is a guy who's onto
yeah.
something.
We would like to eventually raise as much as we need in order to allow us to move on to the next stage without creating the opportunity for bad habits to creep in, you know?
Got it. Anyway, so with regard to the build of the product, where are you right now?
Do you mean like how far the product is from being finished?
Yeah, meaning how did you go about, for example, you start with friends and family, you're creating an MVP, getting some feedback, then going into the
Great.
market, testing with a smaller user group.
So Confy is out at specific events as we speak, and we have been really lucky to get some really nice reception for it at the events that we've powered. The beautiful thing about Confy is that we can power events one by one, so we get to do a different launch at every single event that we power, which is really, really exciting. Um, the public version that will be usable on Luma as well is going to come out by the end of this month, and you'll be able to try that out if you go to any events, including free events on Luma. Um, and for the actual conference app, we have our pilots on our way that we're working to close. And hopefully you'll be able to try that out at the specific event coming soon. So this month you should be able to use it on Luma. We've already built versions of it for previous events, including for Techstars. We powered the latest cohort kickoff on Confy. And in fact, I can show you how that works. If you'd like to see it, I can
Yeah,
probably show you
absolutely.
how that
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
Would
yeah.
you like me to show you? Yeah, so here's what's
Yes.
out right now.
Good start.
Now let me try to share the
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
Let's see if this will work. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Here is the Luma style product that has already been out for a few select events in the past, and the one that you'll be able to use by the end of this month.
Hmm.
Um, and this is for the Techstars San Francisco cohort kickoff event that happened a few months
Yeah.
back. And if, let's say, I am looking for investors, find me investors in the event space, I can prompt it, and it will think about it for a second, and it will give me actual people, actual interesting prospects from the list, people that have RSVP'd.
Right.
So there you go. I host unforgettable startup events. Um, Event planner, IT support specialist. Now, are they also an investor? Yeah, founder at Capital, Tardigrade Capital. All right, that's pretty cool. Venture investor at Coda Capital, and somewhere it must have said in their profile that they are interested in events. So this is a LinkedIn, and this is their actual LinkedIn. Now I don't want to share this person's LinkedIn. I don't know if you want to blur it, but this is their actual profile. I can see it as I'm hovering the mouse over it, and this is their email address. So as you go to this Techstars cohort kickoff, you might as well be prepared in advance and come here with a plan. But let's say maybe I am an investor. Maybe I'm looking for founders in healthcare, right? Health tech. You'll think about it for a second as well, and you'll search through the list. I mean, this is a very simple
Yeah.
application of what we do, right? But the Luma application that's it. This is pretty obvious. Here, I know Nelson. He is the CEO of Afford Health. He is most definitely a health tech founder. LinkedIn and email are right here. This person I don't know so much, but the founder, builder, emergency medical technician. Okay, so probably in health, right? Yeah, and there's a biography, there's some information, there's his X and his LinkedIn. We don't have his email, but we have other people's emails, and so on. AI-powered health tech solutions. I can favorite some of these people, and I can then go back and look at my history, look at my favorites. This is the people that I favorited. This is all the attendees that I've seen so far, and so on. So yeah, next time you go to a Luma event, try out Confy, and you'll be able to search through the attendee list to find people that you'd like to meet. And you can imagine how this could work
Yeah.
at the conference. Beyond just connecting you to people, it can find you sessions,
Yeah.
products.
Yeah.
It can create, intro message suggestions. It will find you people just like this, and so on. This is a simple chatbot interface. I don't love chat, but for something like Luma, it works very well. And for something like a conference, we are building this AI first solution that will replace the old school conference app with a goal-driven experience. So you say you're there to find investors for your startup or buyers for your product or whatever it is you're trying to do, and you will just do the work for you in the app Instead of showing you their email or instead of showing you their LinkedIn, it will let you message them in the app directly. So that's the sort of enterprise type product that we're working on with our B2B customers, our conference organizers, and so on.
Yeah, no, the moment you showed me and I'm contextualizing it for large events, and then my UX mindset is going like, oh, if I were going attending 5 sessions and these are the times, the system knows the timing of where I'm going to be across these 5 different halls at the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an easy way for the system to understand and recommend who's going to be there at the same session? And then I can fix a meeting. It
Exactly.
adds it to my calendar so I can actually manage where I walk
Exactly.
around there so I'm not lost at the conference.
You and your prospect have both attended this event, you can bond over that. You
True,
can
true.
intro, you can write the intro message. Hey, what did you think of such and such's presentation? Or I really felt like this
Yeah,
panel discussion aligns with what you do, what your
yeah,
business. I know you back founders in the event space or whatever,
yeah.
So,
Multiple use
I
cases
mean,
for sure.
it's night and day. Compare this to the current experience of a conference. Realistically, you go to an event nowadays and it is just a phone book.
Yeah.
You are just being hit with 10,000 exhibitors and 1,000 sessions and 50,000 attendee
Yeah.
names. And what the hell are you supposed to do with that? Like, it's the in-person business event market is, it's booming. We know that the exhibitions market is many billions of dollars. We know there's more than 10,000 large-scale events in the world. I mean, it's really just it's mind-boggling. If nobody does this, I'll be mad at humanity. Let me put it that way.
So, in the current journey that you have, what are the biggest challenges you've had while building this?
Biggest challenges. Okay. Um, a few things. We've had personal challenges, we've had sector challenges, and we've had standard founder challenges. So the personal challenge is that both founders have families, and we need this product to be profitable in order to succeed. Or, of course, we need to raise enough money to sustain ourselves, but that's generally not a powerful position to raise from. So, having to balance the requirements of earning enough money to continue working on this and still focusing on just building the product 100% is very difficult, and it's distracting. That's the personal challenge. The sector challenge. Event tech is, by all intents and purposes, still entertainment tech. Even though it's less entertainment-y than music, it still has some negative, some dark stains in the mind of some investors. Now, we don't care about the investors that don't want to work with us. I'm not about to beg anyone to understand the value in this in this sector, but it's definitely challenging to convince people that this is worthwhile. The way that I go at it is I say, I think that this is all about human connection and empowering more good business to take place. I even think that, we can help eliminate spam, even though I've been, some investors think we do just the opposite. We allow you to spam more people, but I think we do. I think we actually eliminate spam if we help you target the right people in a mutually beneficial way. I think that will huge positive for society. So it's the sector is difficult in some ways, and then with technology changing so fast in the AI world nowadays. It's always tough to keep an eye on what is now possible without having to rebuild everything every 2 weeks, right?
Mm.
So, for example, let me tell you one thing. For you to use Confy at an event, whether it's Luma or a conference, we have to cover that event. So we must have access to it. We must decide consciously to power that event. Now, we might decide automatically based on some algorithm, or we might decide consciously based on just analyzing what events are worthwhile for us, but we have to be there. Hypothetically, if there was a way for us to enable people to use Confy at every event, even events that we don't go to ourselves and we have no access to, I genuinely think we would become the fastest growing company in the world. And it might be delusional, but I think so, because the the ability for us to provide value is clear, and having people be able to add events on their own without us having to consciously take the decision to go there ourselves or to power it ourselves, that would allow, I think it will break every growth model that we've ever seen. I mean, the kind of growth that would empower. And so that's not something that we can technologically do at this point in time, but it might be something that will be possible next week, next month, 3 months from now. I don't know. So, building in AI, the reality of building in AI is that a lot is changing. Once that becomes possible, either because we finish that research or because tools become available that we can make use of, I think we will see the most incredible inflection point. And not being late to that is a challenge. But also not being able to do it yet is a challenge as well. So once that technological issue is solved, I think we will be chatting again from a different perspective, from a different point of view.
Look,
Three challenges:
I think,
personal
yeah.
challenges, sector challenges, and technology challenges. Those are the three.
Yeah, I look forward to that update wherein you say, oh, okay, now we can make anybody use Confy and then figure out
Yeah,
where they want to go. That'll be pretty awesome.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
exactly,
I'm thinking in my
exactly.
head, oh, something like a Chrome extension. Whenever I'm browsing events, I'll immediately get a Confy
Yes,
pop-up and says, this is interesting. This is how
that would be
this is how we
exceptional.
rate this event. you know,
That would be exceptional.
yeah.
That would be exceptional. Yeah, yeah.
So when it's in the current, you said you've kind of implemented with a few events. What has been the general feedback from users?
Yeah. 10% of users hate it.
Okay.
60% don't care.
Okay.
And 30% are absolutely maniacal about it, and they write me on LinkedIn at 3 a.m. trying to help me, trying to, asking for help, how to get more matches, how to get, because we limit the amount of people that you can see based on, fair use.
Yeah.
We don't want to encourage spam, but like how to hack it, how to make this work, how to make that work, how to pull more context. Can we pull info from their websites? Can we pull this and that? How do you add, can I make notes? Can I add like all of these things? So I think it's relatively polarizing at Luma events, where we see huge super fans and people who aggressively don't like it, and I see more super fans than people who aggressively don't like it. And then in a conference situation, we've had people pay for it before it was out, just based on the 2-minute pitch that I gave them, and a chatbot search tool. They were like, okay, how much is it? All right, I'll pay you that amount. Even before the product was ready, we've seen people interested in this, to the point that they would be more than willing to take out their wallet and vote with their dollars. So yeah, I think we're building for that 30%. We're building for those super fans.
Okay.
And I must say, considering that this is kind of our third product in the current startup. The first was a music product, the second was the virtual brochure product. Confy is the third product, and I was previously a founder of a different startup, and I had previously worked at a startup, at Tonebase, and I have previously founded other projects. We've never gotten the kind of passionate response that we got for Confy, even in a Luma context, from a different product. So it is extremely special, and we just have to execute. We just have to get it into the hands of people, and I think the rest will take care of itself.
Okay. And what are you doing for that to get it into more people's hands?
We're doing a bunch of research. We're building huge internal lists of all the exhibitors and
Okay.
sponsors of all the events in the world. We are doing a lot of outreach at the targeted events that we cover. I just started a campaign this morning, for an event in San Jose, and we are interviewing also all the stakeholders that we can get our hands on. We just had some wonderful interviews with event sponsors from Brex, just last week. One of them that really shed some light into how other stakeholders think about this. Because what I've shown you, especially for the Luma, is a great experience for the attendee, but we are very conscious of the entire ecosystem that exists around events. That includes
Yeah.
organizers, sponsors, exhibitors, and attendees themselves.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of research, a lot of outreach at the targeted events that we're going through, a lot of interviews, and yeah, talking to people that have used it in the past, to existing customers as well.
Right. I'd like to circle back to what we spoke of just before this, wherein in terms of the feedback you've gotten from users, right? Um, when it comes to looking at pushing out a product for go to market, what I've always experienced as well as spoken to the founders, what I typically suggest them is if there are three sets of people or three segments of users, one who are completely fans, then some people who are fence sitters, right? You said 60% of people don't care much,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. A
Yeah.
majority of people are fence sitters.
And
Yes.
you
Yep.
have the 10% that doesn't like it at all. I always tell founders you need to talk to those 10% because you need to understand
Right.
what is
Yeah.
it that they hate about your product so much. Because if you can have that conversation with them and they're the ones who are going to be most critical about your product, right? And
Yeah.
there is so much to learn when someone gives you objective criticism about what you're trying to build, because it's such an emotional thing when you work with products, right? You
Yes.
the whole buying process is emotional. You may like, and it could be subconscious as well, meaning you like the colors, the feel, and so you say, okay, this is going to be a good product, and you kind of buy into it. Or there'll be people who are a little bit more, they'll really rationalize their experience and then talk about, and then they'll take a decision whether they like it or not. But then the people who
Yeah.
vehemently don't like it, they'll have so much of valuable feedback to give you, right?
Yeah.
For you to
Yeah. Yeah.
analyze at
Yeah.
least. Have you thought about it that way at all?
Yeah. So we know the main objections that we always encounter,
Okay.
and they can be broken up into a few buckets. Um, and most importantly, we know the people, the ones that are not, that are sort of philosophically opposed to the product. We know that we know who they are, and we value their opinion significantly.
If you, because I think it's a very important thing. A lot of founders, typically what happens is you like to hear good news when you're in a struggle in the trenches.
Sure.
You always want,
Sure.
you'll always lean towards the positive side of things, but there's so much of learning in the negative aspects of it. I'm saying learning because you can take from it, you can consider it, evaluate in your own way, in your own context, because users may be coming from a different place and a context, right? That's why I always say when it comes to objective criticism, there is a lot of value when you analyze it the right way. And it can
Yeah.
help you even think about a feature down the road. So my
Yes.
question
Right.
is leading towards product development roadmap over time, right?
Yeah.
And then that's where I was going with it, really.
Right. Um, so I think some of the issues that were surfaced by the people that really don't like the product are more
Okay.
philosophical rather than specifically related to
An
a
experience.
feature
Got
or
it.
or or an experience, right?
Okay.
Um, but that being said, we do make changes. Like, for example, just to give you an example, one of the bad experiences that was reported by one of our users at the previous iteration of the product was that if they gave the same prompt twice, they would get the same result. Which, on the one hand, it's nice that it's objective in the sense that it doesn't just introduce a level of randomness, but on the other hand, it's not great, because if you're looking for more of the same kind of people that you've already seen, the product is useless after you've done the first few searches, right? In the Luma experience, at least. And so we've created a mechanism to solve that problem right away. So now you can exclude previous matches from being featured again,
Right.
and you can also give the search number of people to give you. You can explicitly say, find me 2 people or find me 20 people or whatever. I mean, there are some limits, but it's relatively easy to fix. Let me put it this way: having such an incredibly talented co-founders as I do, and having the power of all these coding tools that exist now, it is so easy to fix product related
Yeah.
issues at this point in time. The difficult things to fix are things like access to data, or the ability for people to gather intel on their own when we are not at the event, or philosophical things like, oh, I believe that the existence of this product will lead to more spam. I strongly disagree with that. I think it will lead to less spam. But I can see how they are thinking about, how somebody can abuse this technology, and if they can hack it or trick it to do things that we don't want it to do. And those are much more difficult to fix. They're not impossible to fix, but they're much more difficult to fix problems. I think when it comes to the philosophical issues, we won't engage with them in the immediate next steps. First, we will build our user base and serve those passionate users as best we can, fix the problems that we can fix easily, but then, we will very much continue to have an imperfect product for a while longer.
Which is, yeah, which is how things
Yeah,
always work, right? You look at a really
yeah,
pertinent problem and you're solving it for, even if it is a niche set of users, but you double down and really make it delightful for them to use, and half
exactly.
the battle is won there itself. But underlining what you just said, that if you have philosophical feedback, which actually talks about an underlying long-term problem that may come up, it always gives
Exactly.
you a pushpin on your product roadmap, wherein you
Absolutely.
say, yeah, by the time we get to this much of daily active users, we need to have solved that problem. Otherwise, it's going to spiral downward, right? Because that's
Yeah,
where
it's the most.
it's like a cliff for the UX to
It,
go down. And you don't want that happening.
yeah, it's the kindest thing that somebody can give you is to give you feedback
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's exactly. And like honest negative
Yeah.
feedback is much more
It's super
valuable,
valuable. Yeah.
because everybody lies. Everybody lies to you. Everybody says, yeah, yeah, it's great. I love it. But then they don't pay for it, or they don't engage
Yeah.
with it. The temptation of believing people, when everybody's lying to you all the time about how good your product is,
Right.
that is I think the hardest thing about being a founder personally.
And now let's look at the other side of it, wherein what's the what's the best feedback that you've got from a fan or a super fan that really said that really has boosted your drive, you and your team's drive, and it says, okay, we are on to this, is like gonna really
Well,
rock.
people people say we can solve events for them.
Okay.
Like we can solve networking. We can solve, lead generation at in person gatherings. And that that problem of like how to find leads, how to network properly. I mean this respectfully, with respect to our previous product in music, but like the problem of helping musicians earn a living from live gigs is much smaller than solving all of lead generation or all of networking at in-person events. And so to see people genuinely understand immediately how this can solve that enormous problem in their lives. We've never experienced anything like that. I wish to every founder that they will get that experience at least once in their lifetime. So yeah, I think that's it. That's the major thing.
Cool. And what's your timeline like? What's your plan for growth? By Do you have some milestones that you set yourself in terms of how
Yes.
you want to scale this?
Yeah. Would love to show you those milestones on a call if anybody's interested. Hit me up and let's talk about them. We have number of events milestones, so how many events we want to cover by the end of this year. We have number of attendees milestones, so how many people do we want to enrich into our database. We have usage milestones. How many users are we trying to achieve? Paying users, customer milestones, and then we have other data milestones. So how many sessions and exhibitors and brands we can learn about and enrich and ingest in time. Those are all going to be immediately important for the success of our business. So yeah, would love to get into more detail. If anybody is interested in learning more, let's hop on a call and I'll show you how we think about those things.
Okay, but I'm trying to figure out if you have a number in mind in terms of the size of the market that you are looking at right now. Do you like how many users do you want? Ideally, when will you say we're taking off, we're good? When you hit what number of users?
So the opportunity is pretty vast, right? I think um, I think if we're able to cover most of North America's events in the next few years, I think that will be the springboard that we will be able to ride on into success, so to say. So it's hard to say exactly how many conference tickets are sold within the United States from that worldwide number, but we are aiming to enrich data into the millions of customers in the next short to medium term. I mean, I'm talking about, maybe 2 3 years, maybe one even, to get into the millions. And if we could get into hundreds of thousands of paying users, or alternatively into hundreds of enterprise deals within the next year, I think that would be a clear indicator of success. And if we could figure out self-service, the ability for people to go to a conference or event without us having access to it, I think we will have every major event in the world on Confy within less than a year of that happening. But that's still a hypothetical. That hasn't happened yet. So that's not something that I'm actively benchmarking against at this moment in time, because first we have to sort it out technologically before we get there. We want to enrich data on at least 200,000 people by the end of this year. We're aiming for over 10,000 end users, but the more important number is the number of B2B adopters. So if we could power over 100 exhibitors by the end of the year, that would exceed our model, which is great. And if we could power more than 10 events by the end of the year, that would also meet our model at this point in time. But that being said, there are ways to make this better. So this is all a balance. If we powered 1,000 exhibitors, it wouldn't matter so much that we didn't power 10,000 attendees, right? Because there are different
Yeah.
values in the amount of value that we can create for different customer types, right? So hitting any one of these would mean we are successful from our financial model at the moment, and hitting one of them way out of the park is possibly a lot more valuable.
So when it comes to go to market, what I'm understanding from a broad perspective is you have multiple user types or user stakeholders, let's say, right?
Yes.
One is the
Yes.
organizers of the event, second is exhibitors at the events, third is the guests who are visiting the events, right?
Exactly.
Fourth, I could,
And sponsors, that's
yeah,
another one. Sponsors
sponsors.
are kind of like rich exhibitors
Correct.
a little
Sponsors
bit.
of the event as well.
Yeah.
So, of all of these stakeholders, which of these do you think is going to be your lowest hanging fruit to get your foot in the door? I know you've done some experiments with
Exhibitors.
organizers and
Yeah.
stuff, but in the longer run, for you to get that
Yeah.
impetus, do you have an idea?
Yes, I think exhibitors are the golden goose here. Exhibitors at large events specifically, because those users are highly motivated to
Sell.
find the right people to network. They're there to fill their quota. They're there to achieve certain well-defined goals. They also spend a lot of money. They spend a lot of money on events. So, if they're already going to spend $100,000 to exhibit somewhere, it's not very difficult to imagine them buying a $10,000 package per event. So they spend a lot of money, and they have really specific goals that they're trying to hit. And to a certain degree, sponsors are also very powerful, because sponsors are kind of like rich exhibitors. My concern with sponsors, based on the research and the interviews and the specific people that we've talked to so far, is that sponsors often have slightly more nebulous goals, like brand awareness, and they're not as driven as the exhibitor to just close deals on the spot at the event. That depends on the sponsor, obviously. The advantage of sponsors, though, is that maybe they sponsor 10 events. So if you get into one of them, you might be able to have, a more value recurring business where maybe the exhibitor only goes there once a year. Maybe they only exhibit at one or two events a year, but maybe the sponsor goes to 10, right? So it remains to be seen whether exhibitors or sponsors are more valuable. My bet is on exhibitors right now at this moment in time. But at the same time, if we were able to sell to the organizers directly, which is much slower in the sales cycle, unfortunately, it will circumvent a lot of the cold start problem of how do you get access to the data that you then enrich and help people search through. If you sell to the organizers, you have the data; it's theirs. They provide it for the purposes of the event itself. So from all of this, I want to say my best bet is exhibitors. I would put sponsors and organizers at like a close second together, and attendees are the least valuable stakeholder. But those are the people that we're actually trying to help. Those are, that's the experience that we're actually trying to fix. And on the side, on the Luma side or the free event side, actually, attendees are the primary user type since there's not sponsors and exhibitors at those events, right?
So
So yeah,
I would kind of argue there that when you say that attendees are the least valuable, I would contextualize it from in terms of user, what do you call it, adoption of your product. An attendee, the
yes,
numbers are in the attendees, right?
yes,
So
the
there is,
the high
yeah.
numbers.
So
Yes, I know what you mean.
so there is inherent value in terms of traction if you can provide some utility to attendees. Whereas
That is
there
true.
is revenue focused value in terms of exhibitors and others, the B2B versus the B2C kind of paradigm, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you would really need to think about whether you can consider the end users or attendees at the lowest of this on that spectrum.
If I may make a more general statement here, I think the old school dilemma between going B2B versus B2C doesn't apply as much in a world of AI. I fundamentally believe we can serve both.
Hmm.
I fundamentally believe that with a single product,
Yeah.
just like marketplaces have two sides of the
Yeah.
market, we can serve both users. Which one is more important? First of all, will change over time. You might have a problem with one of the sides and you need to fix that. Um, I want to say that we are definitely. It's easy to take what I just said out of context. We started working on Confy because we want to improve the attendee experience. Yes, the exhibitors will make us more money. We don't just want to make money, we want to actually make a difference in the world. And so from that point of view, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, that don't think that I think attendees are unimportant. That's not what I'm
Yeah.
trying
I'm just kind
to
of
indicate.
contextualizing that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. you know.
exactly. So we need to think about the success of the business,
Mm.
and the success of the business comes from cash flow and from the ability to have successful fundraisers or profitability early on. And in order to get that, we will likely need to earn money, which is a great opportunity for us to prove that we actually bring value. Because if we don't bring value, if we don't earn a lot of money, that means we haven't figured out a good enough product. So at this very early stage in our company, where the main product is not even live, it will be live soon, right? At this early stage, we care about proving value to the user types that can actually also give revenue to us. Um, I think overall long-term success comes from mass adoption, and that's unavoidable and undeniable. But if I'm going to be in a room with an investor, if I'm going to be figuring out the financial model for the profitability of the business, I would rather be CEO of a business with a lot of exhibitors in it that actually pay thousands of dollars to use the product each one, versus a business that has a lot of attendees that use it for free or for $30 a pop. At this moment in time, the business would be healthier in version 8.
Fair,
That
fair.
being said,
Yeah.
there is an opportunity for success with business model
Yeah.
2. We certainly won't shy away from it, and we definitely have the vision of serving everyone. We don't just want to be an exhibitor tool. We want to be a tool that encourages more and better business to be done at events overall. So yeah, I think you understand what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say.
totally. No, and the reason why I mentioned it is just to make sure that the audience understands the context.
Well, thank you. Thank you for calling me out on that. Yeah.
So now let's look at your take on where the industry is headed with this whole AI fever that everyone has, right? And where do you see the
Right.
events industry evolve in the next 2 to 3 years? And where does Confy fit into it? I know where you're going with the AI part of it totally. But then
Yeah.
in the larger scope of things, the ecosystem, I'm sure, is also moving. They're also thinking about how to adopt AI into the existing apps,
Yeah.
whether it is whatever apps they have now. I attended
Yeah.
TechCrunch Disrupt last year, and they had a pretty decent app.
They had visible.
Yeah,
Visible. Yeah.
and yeah, I'm assuming that in the coming years they're gonna also quickly adapt. So a competition is gonna be definitely there. Things are moving very fast.
Oh yeah.
What is the wedge that a Confi has, and secondly, in the larger scope of the way people are thinking about using AI in events, where do you see the whole ecosystem go?
Yeah. So one thing that I think conference apps have not figured out is that data compounds. So we don't look at our services as mere, IT for events. Like that's a very 1998 way of looking at things. We see ourselves primarily as repository of data that can be used to accomplish people's goals. And so we're replacing kind of the work that the events themselves do. Not to stop events from happening, but to usher in the new age of events that will be built around goals and around very deep knowledge of every attendee. I don't think events in that way have existed, and I think they are coming. So our wedge is data, and we're looking at ourselves as a data provider more than the actual IT. Like, here's the thing: the actual conference app itself, like here's the map and here's the messaging. That's so easy. You can make that on freaking lovable. Might not be compliant. Whatever, but you can make it.
Yeah,
It's not that big of a deal. And so I think that focusing on that is the wrong approach. And I am not afraid to say this because I think businesses will be afraid to cannibalize their own business and will not move into that direction unless they are very capable, very, very fast moving, and maybe startups like us. So I think data is the wedge that we're going in with. And enrichment and searchable data and goal-based search and all of that is the potential here. Now, when it comes to the event industry as a whole, I think it will change enormously in the next few years. I think it will have the choice to adapt and become something else or not. And it's very similar to what has happened to the music business when recording started to become available. The whole paradigm changed, and some dinosaur institutions clung on to the old model and tried to claw back control through laws and lobbying and power and lots of money being spent. And most of them are dead. Some of them are not, but most of them are dead. And the new entrants have arrived. Things like Spotify. It's no longer new, but it was at the time. Businesses that fit the new paradigm arose and filled that void that was left by the old paradigm. So I think this is what will happen with events. I think, if I may make bold predictions, I think events in the way that they've existed so far will not exist in 10, 15 years. And I'm talking about these large scale events. I think we will continue to have very large scale events. We're betting the business on it, but they will be very different from the ones that we have today. I think they will be looser. I think they will be based on goals more than products. And I think that we will be able to create more spontaneous events that actually accomplish more with less investment, both time and money invested into it. So I think that AI is coming for humanity overall, and it's changing is going to change the way that we get together for events. I think a large number of existing events will die. A new cohort will take their place. I think the new cohort will be different in some ways, but I think human connection and meeting up for both pleasure and business is never going away. And so we're betting on that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's going to be a premium for in real life meetings,
Yes.
because everybody's on their devices, everybody's on Zoom calls
Yes,
and stuff. But meeting in
I agree.
person and spending that time, that's going to come at a premium for sure.
Yeah, and that's why we've always been focused on in-person events, including with Cicada, back from when we were just a music business.
Right.
It was all about in-person gigs, and then we became, virtual brochures for in-person demo days, and now we are doing AI for in-person events, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's it.
All right. And what does your team look like today? How big is your team and what's happening?
Yeah, very small.
Okay.
We are two co-founders.
Hmm.
We have a number of advisors, but we are so bullish, if I may use that word, on our ability to deliver as a very, very, very small team. Um, it's not like we want to be two people forever. We are very open to hiring capable people both on the engineering side and on the go-to-market side. We would love to do that in the future, but we think that our ability to make stuff happen with a very small team is proof that we can punch above our weight, and that we will continue to be able to do that in the future. I am the CEO. My co-founder Mark is the CTO, and we're both also professional musicians.
Nice.
We don't have a lot of time for that work right
Hmm.
now because just we're so focused on this. But we are, and we play together. We play together even for Techstars at the retreat that they do.
Oh, nice. What is the asks you have currently of the audience? And if you want to talk about a
Yeah.
couple of asks, and then we leave it at that.
If you invest in human to human connection, or if you invest in events, please talk to us. Would love to be connected and show you what we're doing. If you listen to this, no matter what your job is and who you are, and you're going to go to an event anytime soon, drop me a note. I just want to know what event it is, and maybe we can support it. Maybe we cannot, but just drop me a note. And my email is my name, Mircea at Confy.tech. So Mircea at Confy.tech. I know that Mircea is spelled kind of weird. You can also do team at Confy.tech if that's easier. I'll still see that. So write me and tell me what event you're going to next. I would love to see that, and maybe I can help you figure out what events your audience goes to. Maybe we can help you with your own research.
Yeah,
As we
would love to
do this.
experiment as we go ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Those are the two big ones. If you are a talented person who wants to work with us, would love to be connected.
Mircea, awesome to have you on the pod today, and it was a pleasure and really exciting to see what you built and how Confi goes. And wishing you all the very best of success.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure to chat, and yeah, I hope to hear from you soon. I hope to meet you soon,
absolutely.
and yeah, looking forward to everything.